to reply. Okay, now another important thing, today is the World Population Day. So we are just through this program, we are celebrating Population Day as our topic is closely related to the population and the livelihood of the people. NDP Population Day theme was also putting the break COVID-19, how to safeguard the health and the breakthrough of girls and women. So we are also very proud that our first speaker is also woman. So I think we will have some focus on the issues related to the women and their livelihood. Okay, I am not taking more time. People are waiting. I am also for her interesting lectures. May I now request Dr. Leela Mahato for delivering her lecture. Dr. Mahato, please.
Thank you, Dr. Dash, for such elaborate presentation regarding me. And I am audible? Yes? Devabrata, I am audible?
Yes,
So,
yes, Dr.
Okay.
Leela, you are quite audible.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to you all. I'm very much... Yes. What? Sorry, there's a disturbance. Sorry. So I'm very much grateful to principal of Barashat Government College and the conveners organizing committee of this webinar for giving me the opportunity to express my views and share the ideas on livelihood pattern in India with all of you. The world is now undergoing an unprecedented situation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Life now has come almost to a standstill, devoid of the flurry of activity. And the words like novel coronavirus, lockdown, quarantine, containment zone have now become household terms. Amidst these, a new perspective has opened up. Thousands of laborers or workers who are earning their living outside their place of origin have been stranded in various places without food and shelter. Transportation had stopped, and this triggered them to walk along the highways and rail tracks to reach home at any cost. This was the common scenario in almost all states of India in the last 2 months. Actually, they are migrants who left their homes in search of jobs, started their new life with specific livelihood activities in the places of destination. These are just some of the few things. All these phenomena led me to think about the basics of the livelihood scenario in India. In the discussion, I'm going to share the livelihood status, the situation in both rural and urban India. Now, looking at the perspective,
Dr. Mahato,
now I am going to directly.
Hello?
Yes, yes. It is visible.
Showing.
Yes, these are slides. Yes.
Oh, screen sharing is
so now
it is clear. Okay, carry on.
Okay, it is clear.
Okay.
So now my topic is the livelihood in rural and urban India. So the lecture will go on in this manner: the introductory situation, perspective in the India, livelihood and sustainability, rural livelihood strategies, urban livelihood strategies, and the vulnerability situation, and the final part. So now, great diversity, economic diversity, and cultural diversity also. The second most populous country after China, and it is the seventh largest country in the world with 3.287 million kilometers square and a density of population, and more than 88 million people, roughly equal to 6.7% of Indian population, lived below poverty line. Poverty in India impacts children, families, and individuals, and it results in high infant mortality rate. More than 82% of the workforce is employed in the unorganized sector. The dispersed, unorganized, and often micro and small enterprises are the common source of income in both rural and urban areas. Now, coming to my main word, that livelihood are means of making a living. So livelihood comprises the capabilities, asset, and the activities required for the means of living. And the livelihood framework basically have some components, that is livelihood resources, livelihood strategies, some policies, some institution, livelihood outcome, and the vulnerability perspective. And the livelihood assets, these are considered as a resource. It can be categorized into 5 types. First one is natural capital, that includes land, human capital, that includes the knowledge, the health, nutrition, and the capacity to work and adapt. The physical capital, the infrastructure, the transportation and communication facilities. The social capital includes network and connection and the all collective representation. And the financial capital includes the savings and the credit, debt facility, wages, all these. Now, what some problem is there? Hello?
No, it's okay, ma'am. Please carry on.
It's okay, but I can't. Yeah, okay. From another perspective can be analysis. The livelihood assessment is a way of looking at how an individual, a household, or a community build a specific frame condition, and it centered on some basic concepts. Again, from my last slide, that it is livelihood resources, institutional processes, livelihood strategies, livelihood outcome that we are very much concerned about, that is the nutritional security, food security, health security, habitat security, education security, all those. And with all these, the concept of vulnerability, that is the insecurity of well-being of individuals in the face of some changing environment, like those now we are facing through it. All of you know very well this. So the extent of vulnerability relates to the some external threats to a households or individual or communities welfare. And there is the word resilience that help people to resist and to recover from those external threats. Again, our very concept of food security, that is very much related to the livelihood perspective. So there is a food first perspective to a livelihood perspective. So the word livelihood now become more important because it centered around nutritional status, ability of household to procure the foods, and the capability of the people. With this, the word sustainable livelihoods are becoming more and more important, and it includes the capability, and equity. Capability is the ability to perform some basic functions to cope with the stresses and shocks. Equity is the equal distribution of assets, and opportunities, and sustainability is the ability to maintain and to improve livelihoods. And so a livelihood is sustainable when it enables people to cope with the short-term stress or long-term change. Now, you know, from our country, India is very rich with natural resources. Our India is known as land of rivers. The forest cover scenario is also good, and there is rich soil, and here soil, that bottom soil rather, and the coastal soil. Those are very helpful to provide basic resources continue the livelihood of its teeming millions of population. Here is some land use and land cover map. This shows some built-up area, some built-up areas with red color, some cropped areas, and some green area with forest coverage. All this shows really our country is enriched with sufficient amount of natural resources. So the land use pattern also shows that there is a net shown area or agricultural pattern is quite good with 46% net shown area, and the forest cover is 23%. Cultivable waste are there, some fallow land are there, which may be used in future during our requirement of everything. And here is an agroecological region that obviously a correlation of the climate, natural vegetation, and all kinds of resources. This shows that yellow color are the arid situation, and in this green are the some subhumid situation, and these are the red one, the semi-arid, and that is the coastal situation. The all agroecological region shows that how rich in terms of availability of natural resources we are. So now the rural and urban livelihoods. If we think there are some differences and some similarities in terms of livelihood availability. And you know that village or town is recognized as the basic area of habitation, and villages in case of rural area, and in town, as the census definition says, that a minimum population of 5,000 population, and at least with 75% of the male working population, and with a 400 population per square kilometer population density. So there are differences is of course in terms of land use and land cover features between rural areas and urban areas. There are some primary activities in the rural areas are dominating, of course, farming, fishing, and secondary and tertiary activities and manufacturing and services are in the urban areas. And the rural areas people are being sustained by nature, but in urban areas this is not present. People generally inherit jobs in rural areas, but in urban area, job inheritance is not found. Rural areas provide less opportunity to earn as compared with urban areas. Rural area lack industries, infrastructure, which usually found in urban areas. And in terms of similarity, the poverty situation is common both in rural and urban area. Some common jobs like teachers, shopkeepers, traders are common. Daily wage laborers are found both in farms in rural areas and factory in urban areas. Women force also present is in urban area and rural area. Both areas will have dependent population that will not engage in any work, that include mainly elderly population and children. And now, viewing our rural India as there is a golden word of Mahatma Gandhi, India lives in villages. And we are really, it is in mind that really India lives in villages. A majority of Indian population still live in villages, and the graph shows that though there is a declining the population growth in rural India, and between 2001 and 11, the number of census town also increases from 1,362 to 3,800. This causes, actually, India's vision today is highly urban centric nature, and as people in rural areas quit farming and joined non-farm livelihoods, so there is a problem. So, and millions of farmers have quit agriculture because very few from the current generation are entering the sector. So this is the common scenario in the now the rural India. There is 68.8% population in the country, percent workforce resided in rural areas, and the census between 2001 and 2011 shows that 12.18% increase in the rural population. That is much less compared to the urban areas. And according to the latest national sample survey figure, agriculture continues to employ 70% of our rural workforce, industry 14%, and services 14.8%. And rural development, a very promising feature that has assumed a global attention for bringing the changes among rural community. So the present strategy of livelihood in India mainly focuses on poverty alleviation, better livelihood opportunities, provision of basic amenities and infrastructure facilities, adoption of innovative program and wages, and self-employment. And so agriculture is the main form of occupation, and beside this, there in the people in rural areas in this fishing, farming, herding, mining, handicrafts, artworks, and silk weaving, pottery making, small scale and cottage industry, and so forth. Rural activities include activities, agro processing, transport, distribution, retailing, and also tourism, manufacturing, construction, and mining, of course. Some food-related non-farm activities now dominate in the rural area that includes storage, processing, distribution, and transportation of food that provide many livelihood opportunities to the rural population. Actually, life of the rural people are different because government service like law enforcement, school, fire departments, etc. may be unavailable in some places. Utility like water, street lighting, garbage collection may not be present. Public transport in some places are absent, and somewhere it is very limited. People use sometimes their own vehicles or walk. So that there is a large need for the rural development to develop farm, home, and public service and village community, and to improve the village communication and educational facility. Now this is the rural scenario. You can see that specifically in India and specifically in the West Bengal scenario, the resource and the opportunities, how the people of rural areas are going on with their lives. That is agriculture facilities. Some people adopt grazing, and some collected non-timber forest product and shal leaves, and there is some agriculture practices and multiple cropping. You can see the and different of green color with different agricultural crops, and there's also new perspective that Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which has now become a boon to rural India. Work is going on, and Ajivika Prokalpo, that is National Rural Livelihood Mission, that some handicrafts are selling, the people are selling, and there is some people are in work with brick kiln. So these are the entire rural scenario with their livelihoods. Now the women workforce, if we go through that, the rural women's, their employment sector, now it is seen that nearly 61.6% are rural population, rural women rather, do household work as their principal usual activity, because collection of food, food processing activities, etc., for their household work, because most of them have to do their own work within their own individual household, but still they are engaged some of the agriculture activity, and their share is much more, and though it is seen that the share is declining in the year 2017, and so it's fell from actually from 1977 data 73.2% agriculture share to 73.2% from 88 to 73%. So the sharing in agriculture, but one thing is important, that they are more involved in the service activity that the blue color suggests. And the rural employment overall, the scenario of rural livelihood and employment are really alarming, as the socioeconomic data says that the bar diagram shows that 3/4 of the household with my monthly income of less than rupees 5,000, and more than half of the rural household do not own land, and more than half of them are casual laborer. So this situation is not very promising. So naturally, some issues have arisen because rural workers are more footloose. Before, there is considerable seasonal migration from rural to urban areas for short and medium term employment, and for this they may be disconnected from their community, culture and tradition and move to another place, and obviously the vulnerability of the people have gradually increases in the rural sector. And the sectoral GDP growth also say that there is agriculture and allied activity, the growth sector there is slowed down significantly. So though there is some promising scenario in the construction sector, this also declining in the last 4 or 5 years. And MCNREJ's project, there is which became a driving factor during 2008 to 9, and but lost momentum now, and the average employment days per household has is nearly 40 to 50. That is not so good, and the number of households getting employment is declined with time. Now coming from rural to the urban area. Obviously, urban society is quite heterogeneous in character because urban people come from different parts of India. People are usually employed in the government offices, companies, bank, hospital, educational institution, trading and business concern. And though urbanization in India was mainly started after independence, now it is taking place at a very faster rate. And it is estimated that by 2030, another 250 million people would be added to the Indian cities. But consequence of this rate of or pace of urbanization, there is a rapid rise in urban population. Government service very good, but there is also side by side there is pressure on the infrastructure facilities, leading to problems like increasing slums, decrease in the standard of living in urban areas, and causing some environmental damage. And census 2011 says that 17.7% of urban population comprising 65 million people lives in slums area. And the urban livelihood mainly concentrated and mainly includes street workers, vegetable vendors, ice cream sellers, cobblers, rickshaw people, etc. And these are basically self-employed people. Some self-employed businessmen are there in the unorganized sector, some machine shop, cloth shop, small cafe, tea stall. Some factory workers there, some laborers for lifting heavy packages. These maybe they are in some places they are hired and paid on an hourly basis. Some workers in organized sector marketing manager of a company, maybe civil engineer working on bridges, doctor working in hospitals. Actually, those who have got the benefits of retirement plan, companies, medical insurance, etc. There is also white-collar job in organized sector. Basically, it includes some government jobs. There are big factories and industries which give employment to thousands of workers, supervisors, and officers. So most of the urban poor are involved in the informal sector activities. So they have a continuous threat of eviction and removal from their own livelihood practices. So these are the some of the pictures, the development of slums in the common picture of any of the urban cities, basically million cities, and these are the women participation in the National Urban Livelihood Mission. These are the street vendors, these vegetable vendors, the construction work is going on and some involved in it. The street food vendors in some of the places. So this way the life goes on in the now the urban livelihood profile. If we think this, that is that the employment in the informal sector is much more in the urban cases, and it remains stable over the past decades from 2000 to 2010, and 67% of this category are informal wage worker. And now it is seen that the formal versus informal work, that is in agriculture, all are informal, in manufacturing some are informal, and some are formal, and the maximum portion is informal, of course. And the largest category for urban employment is non-trade services. It is transport, domestic workers, and waste pickers. And if you think that million plus cities and the small and medium cities, in case of the share of urban poverty, so million plus cities have higher concentration of poverty and are indeed home to 40% of the slum population. Majority of the poor are in fact concentrated in medium and small towns. 80% of the urban population is 1 million. So these are the livelihood practices and how the livelihood and poverty situation goes hand in hand. Now, considering the urban female workforce, for urban women, the service sector has become increasingly significant, with its share of employment rising from 35 to 60%, approximately. Women have become constant professions like teaching, nursing, and so many other jobs. And urban women, not significantly present, and the yellow color shows that there is a constant share of their presence in the secondary or manufacturing sector. Now, distribution of workforce in different sector, it is shown that share of agriculture workforce has declined by 11% due to automation. So that it means uses of tractors, seeders, and weeders in the agriculture field. That causes the reduction of unskilled manpower in small farms. These numbers translate to millions of job lost. That is obviously the unemployment situation. In manufacturing sector, automation improves quality, diversity, no doubt, and increase the market share. But for small and medium enterprises in Type 2 and Type 3 cities, it is shown there is a automation and the loss of job of so many persons. So there is sector share is gradually increasing. Now, under the National Urban Livelihood Mission, that in the objective are just to reduce the situation, to reduce the poverty and the informal problem, to create a high demand and high supply of labor to low semi-skilled jobs, to provide shelters equipped with essential services to the urban homeless, and to address livelihood concern of the urban street vendors by facilitating access to suitable spaces, credit facilities, and social security, and so on. So these the criteria of the urban area for this is the population. Of course, the those are a million cities. Those get the facility, and the district town with less than 1 lakh population also maybe under this scheme. So the component are social mobilization and institutional development, capacity building and training, employment through skills training and placement, self-employment program, support to urban street vendors, scheme of shelter for urban homeless, and some innovative and special project. So a periodic labor force of India, if we seen the side by side, the rural and urban scenario, including the states and union territories, it shows that the rural area, the periodic labor force is slightly higher. The curve is slightly higher than the urban places, though in some places like the urban share is either similar in case of West Bengal, right? UP, and this is the scenario of course, the Chandigarh, the Union Territories, etc. So this is the periodic labor force available. So this is the period of July 17 to June 18. So rural urban scenario goes side by side, more or less. So now, thinking about the migration scenario of our country, the number of internal migrants in India, that was in the year 2001, it was 309 millions, and it increases in 2011 to 450. And the structure of the migrant population shows that maximum are for the search of jobs to earn their livelihood within the district, and its share is much more in both the year, and some inter-district migration, and that some are interstate migration. The map shows that some out migrants by places of birth. This shows that the maximum poses by UP and then the Bihar. A crisis in recent years, urban employment sources not able to meet the surging job demands due to construction and other related sector also are not generating employment. So all these causes some crisis in the income, occupation, nutrition, and health. So now there is some flow of migration to Delhi urban agglomeration, and this is the Kolkata urban agglomeration and Greater Bombay area, that there is some positive blue color, since some positive rate of migration with number is also stated here. So in Delhi, Greater Mumbai and Kolkata, seen there is a flow of migration. So all these areas act as pull factors. So now in the present, in the last decades, a new trend has been seen. This is the trend to move towards the south. So from various states to the Tamil Nadu, or the center is at Chennai, and here is Hyderabad, and another is Bangalore. So the major cities to the southern cities in search of jobs. It is really the trend that we are viewing. There is the migration, the rate of migration, the number of migration, and as the scenario in the last few months, I have seen this is this of migrant people from these places to their home places, and this the concentration of Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore area, urban agglomeration area. Now, I think you are quite new memory. This is quite situation is in mind that when the lockdown started, the borders were sealed, transportation, factories, shops, restaurants, and all type of economic activities were shut. And it came as a nightmare for hundreds or thousands of migrant workers who lost their livelihood overnight and became homeless. The immediate change faced were obviously related to food, shelter, and loss of wages, fear of getting infected side by side, and anxiety. And thousands of them started fleeing from various cities to their native places. And it clearly shows that migrants who are basically leave their home in search of job, they are working in the unorganized sectors, are most vulnerable to any kind of urban disaster and epidemics. So these are the most vulnerable group in terms of livelihood occupation. So now coming again to the scenario that from July 19 to April 20, the India's unemployment rate fell. It was in July 2019 to April 2020. It was gradually the employment rate increases, and April 20 it was due to lockdown period, the rate is high, that is 23.5%. And after the end of the lockdown, unlock one phases in the month of May, June, it declines to 11%. And the jobless rate of urban area, if you think this is a rural urban unemployment rate from March 20 to June 20, I have collected this from CIME report. It suggests that jobless rates in urban area dropped to 12%, that yellow color shows, dropped to 12% from May to June, because some sectors have been opened up. While that in rural areas, it was dropped to 10.5 from 20, that is from April situation, that is 22%. So this rural urban scenario is this, that unemployment rate that increases the beginning of the lockdown period. See, the data is collected from 22nd March, and now the 5th July, the rate is quite low because people are now back to their work. Many people, not the all. Now, the one interesting thing, and all that photographs, and the most interesting thing is that youth unemployment and the literacy level. If you think that PG, postgraduate degree, graduate degree with technical degree, the rate of unemployment is much more compared to the other sector. And this is a very dreaded and fearful situation. And I have to think about this. And one interesting or a good observation, that in India's 6 largest metros, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Hyderabad, and Bangalore, 48% of residents are migrants. So this is the actual situation. I think at the beginning of the lockdown or in the mid-May, it's an observation, of course, 1.5 lakh migrant workers want to return to Haryana, and 8 lakh migrant workers stranded in Haryana to return to their native place. So you can just, taking an example, you can view that from Haryana, 1.5 lakh are migrated to the various states, and the 8 lakh migrant workers stranded in Haryana, this amount where they are stranded during the lockdown period. So now coming the livelihood in the situation. So the food security concern are becoming now an issue of access rather than availability. So, because there may be their availability of more food, more resources, but it accessibility, it the way how it can be accessed is the much more important. So the challenges also come from the rural economic structure, which are now undergoing a restructural situation, a movement from rural sector to non-farm, rural agricultural sector to non-farm sector. Now challenges about health and employment and living environment. There is a changes in the land use pattern and in the inherent socio-demographic structure of villages. And there is an economy of rich cities and poor villages. So a surging of urban areas and decaying of rural areas. And the scene is that rural India is far behind the urban India in every indicator of progress. Nearly 26% of rural India is poor compared to the 13.7% in urban areas. So the vulnerability situation obviously has come. Now we are facing, we are experiencing this. It is the external threats to households, individuals or communities, and a resilience must be there to resist or to recover from that situation. So the vulnerability may come in terms of livelihood insecurity, in terms of obviously food security, seasonality of rural livelihood practices, marginal worker exposed to risk like flood and droughts and of cyclones, market fluctuation, harvest failure, lack of assets and government intervention, and lower resilience of the poor, those who are constantly serving to get 2 square meals a day. So now, in summing up, it can be said that meaningful livelihood is possible in rural areas and both in urban areas. In rural areas, it is conversion of waste land to the arable land, adoption of crop diversification, livestock development and regeneration of fodder, rises in groundwater level may increase in some cases by adopting watershed management project, horticulture-based sustainable livelihoods for tribals, specifically in rural tribal belts, development of tourism activity, solving the problems in marketing agricultural products, some additional employment through SHG groups. And in urban areas, some rigorous assessment is necessary, some aggressive capacity building through various projects, some protecting some essential assets, some vulnerable burdens must be eased down, and some timely intervention and proper land use planning, of course, is very much needed. And some steps are taken by the government and central government and state government. This National Rural Livelihood Mission project, and same that is MGNREGS project, Ajivika SHG group intervention, and some of the project relating to National Urban Rural Mission, as I have mentioned. So now with this, I conclude my words on livelihood and hope. I am just trying, so thank you for your kind attention, all of you. So it will be.
Hello.
So, okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, madam. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm here. I'm audible. Yes.
Now the session is open for question answer interaction, and madam, please be stay. We are not providing
Yes.
you tea or coffee during this session. So just stay with us. There are lots of questions coming. I have taken only 3 more questions.
Yes.
Hello, madam is audible.
Yes. Yes. I can hear you.
just read out one by one, then you will try to reply. Okay.
Yes, yes.
One question is coming from Tulika Bishwas, PG student or Bhairav Ganguly College. There are organized and organized sector in the economy based on employment
Yes,
condition. Please comment on the
yes.
challenges faced by the laborers from the unorganized sector. May I repeat?
Yes, yes, yes. No, no. It is actually
Okay.
economic sector basically is divided into three, as we have already discussed. That is, one is primary, secondary, and tertiary. And based on employment condition, these are again classified into organized and unorganized sector. The unorganized occupational group includes small and marginal farmers, landless agricultural laborer, fishermen, and those engaged animal husbandry and some beady rolling industry and packaging, building and construction work, leather works, weaver. All these are in unorganized sector. And actually, this sector is not incorporated with the government. And obviously, no rules are there to be followed for them. And this sector is not registered with the government, and whose terms of employment is not fixed, not regular, and is considered they are unorganized, the labor in the unorganized sector. And obviously, their problem there is much more because uh, uh, what main problem is they are really uh, the working hours are not fixed and their wage rate is not fixed, and moreover in some cases they have to work on holidays, Sundays, and they get daily wages for their work in some cases, and obviously comparatively less as prescribed by the government. So their occupation, their uh, everything, their the construction worker, like domestic workers, worker working on the street, people working in the small workshop are really uh, in the challenges. They face so many challenges regarding the wages, and moreover, works may be terminated at any time without any notice. That is the main problem regarding the laborer in the unorganized sector. Oh, so yes, Dr. Dash.
Thank you, madam. I think it is clear to all of you, all of the
Yes,
audience. Okay, next question. It is coming from outside West Bengal. Mohammad Firoz, research scholar from Aligarh Muslim University. He's asking, as a step for women empowerment, what are or can be the best livelihood opportunities in rural India? Is it
yes.
clear, or may I?
As a, no, no, no. The
Okay.
rural women rural workforce. Yes, as you have seen, they are participated in large number in the agriculture sector. Though their participation in the out of agriculture field is much less, but still, now there is a growing increase in the work in the non-farm sector. But their share is much more, much less compared to the other their male counterpart, of course. And to support them as and to give the more employment opportunity, some situation maybe some strategies must be outlined for them, so that they become more confident, they become more trained, they become more exposed to non-farm activity except agriculture. So the strategy must be enhancing their livelihood through some financial inclusion. That means to access to capital and credit by uh, by providing some credit and increase by in this way the women's credit cooperative society can help them, and they then become much more confident. And if some training can be provided or some knowledge about technology, so that they create some alternative job opportunities except the agriculture in the non-farm sector. And because and the third maybe that is their participation in the livelihood programs is should be much more, because community participation can only make them more confident to do that kind of job that is not included in the farm sector. So non-farm sector needed much more technology, much more training. So much more livelihood programs, if can be organized for them, it must be helpful for them. So in that case, they become more empowered through earning much more for their own households, and also side by side for the community also.
Thank you, madam.
Yes, Dr. Das.
Another important questions, very much important questions. This is also my observation. Do you think, ma'am, that migration is must for the sake of earning? There are so many projects taken by state and central government, but still, what is your opinion, please? The question is from Subroto Sarkar, Sagor Mahavidyalaya, Sagor, and the similar questions from Barasat government, from Bosirhat College, Rajat Haldar, also
Yes.
asking the same question.
Yes, very yes, a good question, especially in this perspective. And so you know that in India, a land of diversity with varied climate, soil, vegetation, arable land, etc. So here, as all of us know, the most important pull factor for majority of the rural migrants are that better opportunities, availability of regular work, and relatively higher wage in the urban areas. So these act as a pull factor, and better opportunities for education and better health facilities also outside their places of origin. And one thing is better source of entertainment also. And one thing that is any kind of vulnerable situation that is caused by some natural disaster, because as we have observed very recently, some cyclonic hit, that is with Amphan, we have seen the last Ayla incidents in the West Bengal, and some flood situation, some drought situation, and sometimes crop failure at some particular places force villagers to migrate to cities. And so these are the main causes, and because they have want to earn more for his individual and also for his family, so they migrate to the cities or from to, other places. And another thing is that the reason behind migration is, of course, in India, that is marriage also causes, and you know that 46% of the total migrant moved because of marriage. And there is another causes, but for livelihood purposes, the better wage facilities, better condition, though they may involve in the unorganized sector, but still they want to go. Because in the last few days newspaper, I think most of the you have seen that many of the migrants who returned home during lockdown period are very eagerly waiting, or some of them has already gone to their previous workplace because there is no job is at their place of origin. So they again they had to go their places of work. So migration is necessary in the present perspective. Yes, Dr. Dash, please.
Just another one question from YouTube platform. I am taking only one question from YouTube platform. This question is from Pronoy Kanti Das. How can survive the marginal workers in urban area in this situation?
So marginal,
the marginal
yes,
workers
yes.
in urban area in this situation.
So marginal workers usually it's a very tough time, no doubt, but still, if some of the government help initiative that is included in the national urban NULM projects, if they are included with this project, and the government must be undertaken some initiative they can survive, because the marginal workers are really in trouble, because their wage rate and their days of working are really less. So if the government initiative, and because in this particular situation there is no other alternative otherwise. Okay, Dr. Dash, thank you for the questions. I'm not audible, Dr. Dash.
Covering all the area you have discussed. I think again the time for giving you a lots of thanks for giving the time and discussing
My
the
pleasure.
issues, pertinent issues related to COVID or post-COVID relation, post-COVID situation in India, mainly the migrant labor and the challenges faced by the labor, etc. And the lecture definitely all we are enjoying very much, because this is totally based on the database, and definitely again I am giving thanks from on behalf of the organizer, from behalf of the Warsaw Government College. Thank you, madam.
It's my pleasure, and thank you all again. Okay. Thank you.
Now,
thank you also, Dr. Bhattacharya.
okay.
Thank you also, Dr. Bhattacharya, for giving me this opportunity to say something here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now
thank you, Dr. Leela, for
hand of the virtual platform to Dr. Rajnarayan Gupta. Rajnarayan Gupta is audible. Hello, Rajnarayan Gupta present here. Rajnarayan da, আপনি আছেন তো?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ আছেন রাজনারায়ণ দা। চন্দন দা, আমি জয়ন্তকে ইন্ট্রোডিউস করিয়ে নিচ্ছি। ওকে,
প্লিজ ক্যারি অন।
hello. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Leela, for your thought-provoking lecture. Now I would like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Jayanto Kumar Dwivedi. Jayanto is a brilliant student of economics from Calcutta University. He has completed his PhD in 2008 under the supervision of Dr. Sharbudhi Choudhury of Calcutta University. In his academic career, he has explored an extensive field of economics. He is a relentless researcher in the field of agriculture economics, development economics, economic trade, public finance, labor economics, informal sector, and so many. His book, jointly with his guide, Dr. Choudhury, The Economics of Child Labor in the Era of Globalization, Policy Issues, has been published in 2017 from Routledge. At present, he is an associate professor of economics of Brahmananda Keshav Chandra College and a guest faculty of Calcutta University. And at the same time, he is efficiently engaged in different academic works of West Bengal State University. Being a classmate of him, I am feeling really proud and happy to introduce him. His today's topic of lecture is the COVID-19 pandemic, challenges for the Indian economy. I hope the session will be interactive and informative, and all of you will surely enjoy it. Thank you. Over to Jayanto.
Thank you, Dola.
Jayanto, please take the person.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you are quite audible and visible.
Okay, thank you, Dola, for your kind words of appreciation, and good afternoon, everybody. I think it's already evening, whatever. And I really thank the organizers for inviting me to say a few words about this particular topic. I'm really happy to be present here in this webinar and share my thoughts. And what I will do is I have a small PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share here. And then, can you see the PowerPoint?
Okay.
You can see.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I am going to do is, as you have already mentioned, that I will focus mainly on issues related to challenges faced by Indian economy. I have divided this presentation into two parts, actually. The first part, I will talk about how the government is actually trying to face this challenge. What are the policies the government is taking? And I'll try to argue whether they are sufficient or not, in my understanding of the situation. And while doing that, I will try to use certain data points, mainly from Reserve Bank of India website. And I'll try to argue whether the kind of policies that the government has taken so far is adequate or not, or in the right direction or not, or what are the policies that can be taken, I mean, if required. So my first part is basically going to address the macro concern of the Indian economy. And then in the second part, it's a related one, but I thought I should put it here because I was fortunate.
Hello.
No, someone is working.
Please mute yourself.
Can I continue?
Oh, okay.
Continue.
Okay. So the second part, what I'm going to do is, actually I was just like you all, because we are sitting home idle and trying to do certain things, and I am also attending some webinars organized by many institutions, colleges. And what I found is that no one is actually talking about another issue. I mean, I haven't seen that. Maybe some people are talking about that issue. So that issue is how the states, I mean, Indian states are facing, what kind of challenge they are facing. And because I am a researcher from public finance, background. So I will try to address this issue as well as my second part. So what I will do is, in the second part, I will try to argue how the states are, like say West Bengal or Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, any state. So I will try to explain how the states are behaving and what kind of challenges our states are facing, given our federal structure. And then I will end with some specific, policy prescriptions, so that, I mean, to my understanding, what government should do to encounter this kind of situation in the future. So as I have already mentioned, I will start with the first one, of course, is the macro issue, as I have already mentioned. And there, as you can see here, what happened to our economy so far. What is difficult at this moment is to actually estimate what is going to happen to this to our economy at this moment, because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to sustain. Every day we are seeing numbers like 1 week back, it was like every day in our ABP Anando headline, the headline was saying that today is the record increase in COVID-19 patient. The number was 20,000. Today itself, the number is 27,000. So every day, the number of infection is going on. So we don't know how long this will continue. And therefore, it's very difficult to guess what would be the cost of this pandemic in terms of economic shock. Some estimates are available so far. Initially, RBI, our Reserve Bank of India, our central bank, it was saying that the negative effect that is going to be on our Indian economy is for the first quarter only. That is for first 3 months of the financial year. So they were expecting that the first quarter will show some negative growth. Then ultimately the year will end with somehow positive GDP growth, or maybe a growth rate which is pretty close to zero. That is, we are not going to shrink, we are not going to grow. But now it is clear that RBI has also admitted, the central government is also saying, and then there are international organizations like World Bank, IMF, and there are rating agencies. They all are saying that India is going to shrink heavily. I mean, the number may be 4.5% as presented by IMF, maybe 3.2% as predicted by World Bank, maybe 5%, maybe 6%, we don't know. And then along with this shrink in economic activity and GDP, you can expect there are humanitarian crises that will increase. I mean, this is unfolding already. I mean, as my previous speaker was showing you the pictures of thousands and millions of people, you know, coming back from their workplace to their native place. This is a huge humanitarian crisis we are experiencing at this moment. And I'm not ignoring that part, because they are all interconnected. If your GDP shrink, I mean, if your economy falls, I mean, this is that circular flow of income, as you know, those who are from economics. If your production are shut, then people will lose their job, and if people lose their job, there is no demand in the economy. People are not going to buy anything. Then the producer, what they are going to do with production? So they will not be able to sell. So this is a chain reaction that goes on in economics, and the economy falls in a tailspin, and the economy falls like from the cliff. So what is needed? That's why government intervention is needed, because you cannot leave the economy as it is, right? So if you leave the economy as it is, it will fall. I mean, just like a snowball, you know, from the high mountain, and it will increase. The size of that snowball will increase. The economy will fall farther and farther and farther. So what normally government, I mean, throughout the world, actually, all the governments, they are doing is basically they are trying to manage this situation, and they are coming up with what is known as, you know, stimulus packages, right? They are trying to stimulate the economy in terms of pumping money into the economy. There are different concepts of that pumping, but I will try to understand. So, for example, Japan has came up with a huge stimulus package. USA also came up with a huge stimulus package. All the European countries have come up with a huge stimulus package. Just like India also came up with a stimulus package. And I'll try to understand the kind of stimulus package that the central government has announced so far. And from there, what I will try to understand, or what I'll try to argue, whether they are in the right direction or not, and if they are in the right direction, they are sufficient or not. If they are not sufficient, then what are the things government should do at this moment to arrest this downfall and revive the economy from here onwards? So these are the things that the policies of the government, the government has taken so far. These are the policies the government has taken so far. It's like, some of you know that government has tried to, I'm not reading all of them. There are many points here. One is liquidity infusion through LTRO, LTRO2, and reduction in CRR, repo, reverse repo. These are all technical terms, but I'll explain them in simple words. Then loan freeze of regulatory deferrals, collateral-free loans, guarantees to MSME, free food and fuel for poor, direct cash transfer for some people, and then allowing additional borrowing by states, additional spending on MG and NREGA, and then some employment scheme for migrant workers. If you divide all those policies into two groups, some of them are, we call in economic terms, are to infuse capital into the system. They are supply side. So what the government is trying to do, basically the first 2-3 policies, they are announced by Reserve Bank of India. What they are trying to do, they are trying to infuse liquidity into the system through reduction in CRR, through reduction in repo, through reduction in reverse repo. The basic objective is to increase reserves at the hand of commercial banking system. What is the purpose? If the reserve at the commercial banking system increases, the assumption is they will ultimately give loans to the production units, to the farms. And with that additional loan, there is some disturbance going on. With those additional loans, farms will be able to utilize those loans to start their production activity, and they will flourish. So the economy will revive. So the supply side of the kind of supply side policies that the government is trying to take is to facilitate the producers so that they can get cheap credit to utilize in their production process. And the kind of policies like, say, employment schemes for migrant workers, additional spending on MG and NREGA, these kind of policies, they are meant to support the poor people because they have lost their job, they have no money to spend, and if the government can pump some money into their hands, they will spend that money in the market. That will generate demand. So these are demand side policies that the government is trying to take. So it's a well blending of some supply side policies and demand side policies that the government is trying to take at this moment, or has taken so far. But the problem is, I have not written the monetary values of each and every policies. I know them, but I didn't wanted to bore you with numbers. But if you analyze this whole package, stimulus package announced by the government, which is about 10% of our GDP, that is the total number. If you add all the money employed in those schemes, it's about 20 lakh crore. Okay, but if you analyze it more, carefully, then you will find that out of that 20 lakh crore, most of them are actually supply side interventions, like the first one, like the second one, like the third one, and like the sixth one, this one. That means out of 20 lakh crore, nearly, to my calculation, as per my calculation, is about 18 lakh crore is basically trying to infuse capital and trying to address the problem from the supply side. And only 2 lakh crore, which is only about 1% of our GDP, is the government pumping in terms of demand infusion. And that is the problem. My argument is, the problem that we are encountering at this moment is more from the demand side than the supply side. Why I'm saying this? I will try to argue that using certain data points. So because we don't have any data at this moment, we cannot collect any data at this moment. So let's go back to just the pre-COVID period. That is, COVID started in India. I mean, in terms of its in terms of its spread, I mean, its seriousness, from March. So the lockdown also started in somewhere in March 23rd or something like that. So prior to that, what was happening in Indian economy? Let's if you can analyze that, then we will be able to understand what was happening in the economy, and then we will be able to come up with appropriate policies. So this is what was happening in our economy. So this is in 2012-13, the growth rate was at 5.46%, went up to 8.26% in 2016-17. Then it came down to a very low level of only what is happening? What is happening here? No. It's very low level of only, I'm sorry. Only 3 point some percent or there. Just a minute. I can't see it. Can you see me and my slide?
Yes, all clear from our side.
But I can't see it. Just a moment.
And it is 4.18 in 2019 and 20.
Yeah. So this is. Okay. So this came down to 4.18%, just 1920, just last financial year. That is, I am quoting the data for March 2020, just 3 months back. Okay. So as you can see, there is a severe fall even before the pandemic struck. This is of the fall from 8.26% to 4.8%. Let's zoom in a little bit and then see in terms of quarterly growth rate. As you can see, the quarterly growth rate was 9.67% in quarter 2, 16-17. It is now only 3.09% in quarter 4 of last financial year. You can see a severe fall, and I have red marked 2 data points. This is when the, that infamous demonetization happened, one, and this is when our GST implementation happened. So after that point, somehow the economy is going down and down and down. Now the question is, if the economy was going down in that rapidly, So the problem must have aggravated, because that pandemic, that the kind of pandemic and the kind of lockdown that we are experiencing right now, that actually has aggravated the situation further. Okay, so let's see what was happening then. Then we will be able to understand what is happening now, so that we can frame our policy effectively. Look, when we talk about, as you know, this is not, when you talk about economics or any social science, it's not physics. We don't talk about formula, right? We don't talk about mathematical formula that a plus b whole square will be equal to a square plus 2ab plus b square. Economic policy is basically, I mean, I relate this with, in fact, medical science. If you can diagnose the problem effectively, then your policy will work. That's why you see some economists are saying that this policy is going to work. Then some other economists are saying that this policy is not going to work. Why? Because of the diagnosis problem. If we can diagnose the problem correctly, our policy prescription are going to work. I'm not saying what I am saying. My diagnosis is correct. I'm trying to diagnose using certain data points, and then trying to say what the government should do, what the government should focus more on. So this is what was happening before the lockdown. I was trying to understand what was happening in terms of liquidity infusion. If you go through my writings here, I'm just summarizing that, you will find that from 2016 onwards, when the slowdown started, little bit of slowdown started after demonetization, then after GST, the slowdown became faster. So what the government came up with, the government was trying to infuse capital repeatedly by cutting repo rate and reverse repo rate. But what was happening is that though the banks were getting more money, they were not actually investing them in the productive sector. They are basically now not very confident to lend their money to the production sector. Instead, what they were doing is they are parking their money with the Reserve Bank of India with only a rate of interest, which is called reverse repo rate. That is a rate, if commercial bank keep their money with Reserve Bank of India, they earn a short-term rate of interest that is called reverse repo rate. Though the reverse repo rate fell from 7% in, I mean, it's not 7%, it was 6.25% in 2016 to only 3.35% now. Instead of that fact, commercial banks are pumping more and more money, keeping more and more money with the Reserve Bank of India. What is this telling us? This tells us that even with your credit infusion, policy, there is no takers. Commercial banks are risk averse now. They don't want to take risk. They don't want to lend to the productive sector. So with credit infusion, you cannot solve this problem. There is enough credit in the society. There is enough liquidity in the system, but no one is using that liquidity. This argument will be substantiated by my next slide, where I'm showing what kind of capacity utilization we are showing by core Indian industries. This is a data. This is very useful data published by Reserve Bank of India. Each quarter they publish it, and the objective of this data is basically to understand what is the demand condition in the economy. And as you can see, the capacity utilization figure, the blue line, that fell from 72%, then that increased to 76%. It is now at around 68%. And this data corresponds to quarter 3, 2019-20. That means this data corresponds to December, January 2020. This is at historical low. That means what? That means producers, companies, they have capacity. They cannot utilize their capacity. They are sitting with excess capacity. So what will you do if you ask producers to produce more, to borrow from the bank and then to make investments? They're not going to do that because they are sitting with excess capacity. What is their problem? Their problem is they are producing things, people are not buying them. They are giving discounts, but people are not buying them. My argument is the economy was suffering from a severe demand crisis, and the government was repeatedly again and again ignoring that signal. Though the RBI in their report was saying that the economy was suffering from a severe demand deficiency. And now think what is happening now. Due to this lockdown, millions of people lost their job. Maybe some of them reinstated, but millions of people lost their job. That means demand has shrunk further, right? So all these data points, they are telling us that the problem is actually originated from the demand side, not the supply side. So my argument is the kind of stimulus package that the government has taken so far is not sufficient. Yes, I can understand why the government is actually playing little, should I say, little defensively, because they are thinking that if we go with a severe demand generation scheme like pumping more money into the system in terms of giving transfers and Narega infusion, things like that. If we give more money to people, that can create excess demand and that can create inflationary pressure in the economy. But the problem is, because we are at an historical low level of demand, I don't think we are going to suffer from inflationary pressure. So my understanding would be, so my policy, I'm skipping this one because this is related to what I have already said. So my understanding is we are actually going through a severe demand deficiency, and because there was a global slowdown that was going on, so that actually aggravated our problem further. And now, because we were already in a kind of slowdown mode, now that pandemic came, so we are in a severe kind of a problem. I mean, that's why what we should do now. So I will end my first part with this. With this slide is my policy prescriptions. So we should have supply side intervention. I'm not ignoring that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have supply side interventions, but they should be targeted interventions. What I mean by saying targeted intervention? Targeted intervention is, remember, not all the sectors of the economy are suffering similarly. For example, if you see the service sector, some of the sectors, they never experience the kind of lockdown that other sectors experience, like banking, right? They were open, right? I mean, limited. It was limited operation, but they were, I mean, but if you, agriculture, okay, the production season was on, they will suffer if the lockdown extends, because the kind of auxiliary services, the supporting services like transportation, etc., and then selling of procurement, etc., if they don't open up, then they will suffer. But think like the hotels and restaurants, right? Tourism, they are going to suffer more because of this lockdown. So the government should have supply side intervention in terms of more directed supply side interventions, coupled with massive spending. I am in favor of, and there are many economists, those who are suing. I mean, you must have seen the piece written by Abhijit Binayak. You must have seen the piece written by maybe Kaushik Basu, C. Rangarajan. All of them are arguing in favor of a massive demand generation scheme by the government. Problem is, government at this moment is not certain to take an aggressive stance. And the third policy prescription that I want to make is addressing the question of migration. As my previous speaker was saying, that I mean, this is really confusing. Some people, they want to go back to their workplace, but at the same time, there are millions of people, they want to come back to their native place. We don't know, because we know there are two forces that create that migration pressure. One is the pull one from the urban areas, and another one is the push factor from the rural areas. We don't know which is acting and how seriously it is acting at this moment. So we don't know when the lockdown is hello. So we don't know whether, even if you allow the people to go back to their workplace, they will readily, all of them will go back to their workplace readily or not. That we don't know yet. Okay. And so it's not clear whether that recovery that we are talking about, yes, the economy is falling at this moment, but the economy will recover. And some people are saying that the recovery will be V-shaped, like the fall was sharp, and so the increase will be sharp. I'm not sure whether that will happen because of this third point. And it may so happen that many people, the kind of raw deal that they have experienced, they are not willing to go back to their workplace at this moment, and this can create some excess demand. Post-COVID, this may create some excess demand at urban centers, and this may increase the labor cost as well, in the short run. So this is, I will end here. My first presentation ends here. My first part of my presentation ends here. So I will talk about the kind of problem, states are facing and why I'm talking about this. I'm talking about, think of a situation when a pandemic struck, right? Like this COVID pandemic. Who is at the forefront? Is the states. Because states are, public order, public health, they are state subjects. And only when there is an interstate, movement, possibility of interstate movement, then only this becomes a concurrent list. Okay. So what happens when any emergency struck, like a COVID, like any natural disaster, what happens is that the state faces the initial, brunt. So think about this pandemic when it struck. What happened? The states are going to spend more on health infrastructure. They will have to build hospitals. They will have to buy PPEs. They will have to provide more beds. They will have to, create more quarantine centers. And now, because we are in a federal structure where the states are not, not fiscally in a commanding position. They are. We have a fiscal structure. We have a federal structure which is basically a centralized federal structure where the center enjoys most of the powers. I will explain why I'm saying this. So the problem is you are telling the states to control a pandemic without sufficient ammunition. So you are in the front line without sufficient ammunition. This is what is happening in our economy as well. So this is creating inefficiency in our response to COVID, and that's why this is creating some problem. And I will argue why I am saying this and what should be done in the short run, in the medium term, and in the long run. So this is our federal structure, basically. This is how the revenue is shared. Okay. So these are states. The left-hand side is the states, and this is the center. The center, if you see, they collect all the buoyant and elastic revenue sources like income tax. They collect them. Corporation tax, they collect them. GST, a part of that is going to the center. Customs duty, central excise. What the states collect is the property tax and capital transaction tax. VAT on petrol products. When we buy petrol and diesel, we pay a VAT on that. We pay excise also. That goes to the center, and then GST, a part of that comes to the state, and then state excise on liquor. Okay, that's why some states encouraging people to drink more, and then some non-tax revenue. And then what happens if you analyze all those income sources of the center and the states, a part of that income collected by the center again comes back to the states as central transfers. Why this happens? This happens because we accept our constitution accepts that this is a biased structure. This is a centralized structure. States are not having enough fiscal power. That's why in the constitutional itself, it has been granted that some part of the central revenue should be distributed among the states. But the problem is when you are dependent on the center, your flexibility is very low. I will try to show you in terms of some data that how much flexibility states enjoy and why this can create problem in the future as well. And this is what I'm trying to say. This is different states, and out of their total revenue, what percentage comes from the center? As you can see, if West Bengal earns 100 rupees, nearly 54% comes from the center. For some states like Manipur, it is 86%. For states like Arunachal Pradesh, it is 84%. For say Himachal Pradesh, it is 63%. For Tripura, it is 76%. On an average, if you draw an average line here, on an average, 50% of states' revenue comes from the center, owing to the fact that most of the revenue sources are with the central government, and they collect the taxes, and then they distribute them with the center. With the states. Okay, there is a formula. There is a Central Finance Commission. They create a formula. I mean, poorer states get more and richer states get less. And so there is a formula. Through that Central Finance Commission formula, the money is distributed among the states. But what is critical here is that for a state, there is very limited flexibility, because 50% of their revenue is not controlled by them. That is coming from the center. If the center's revenue fall, the share from the center will also fall. And that is what is happening now in this pandemic era. And on the other side, look at the expenditure. 60% of states' expenditure is committed expenditure. That means what? You can't reduce them. Committed expenditure means expenditure on wages, expenditure on salary, expenditure on pension and administrative services plus interest payment. So that means if your earning is 100 rupees and if you are spending 100 rupees, if you are not running a deficit, then 60 rupees is your spending, which you cannot reduce at any cost. You will have to pay that. For West Bengal, the figures are like this. State's own revenue is 46%, 54% is coming from the center. State's own revenue, excluding GST. Why I'm saying excluding GST? Because GST is not controlled by a state. GST rates are controlled by the GST Council, where a state is meagerly a member, a marginal member. It can raise its voice, but it cannot influence the decision. Okay, so therefore, only 26% of West Bengal state's revenue is controlled by the state itself. You can see how much flexibility is left with the state given this federal structure. And then committed expenditure. Out of our revenue receipt, whatever West Bengal government earns, nearly 67%. I was talking about 60%, that's the Indian average. For West Bengal, it is 67%. If the West Bengal government earns, this is related to 18-19 figure. So if the West Bengal earns 100 rupees, 67 rupees it spends on salary, pension, and interest payment on its previous loans. So you can when the center is asking the states to reduce its expenditure, it's not possible for any states to do so, because they are reeling under severe financial pressure. Okay, and if you see the committed expenditure, this is actually, I mean, very serious. This is committed expenditure is a percentage of states' own revenue. If you exclude central transfers, I'm not telling you to exclude central transfer, because they are central transfer which are constitutionally guaranteed. But if you try to calculate that, it's coming out at 146%. So what the West Bengal government earns, its committed expenditure is more than that. So you can understand, and this is not specific to West Bengal. I'm just showing you an example. This is actually the situation for most of the states, barring one or two. Why this is so? Because of our federal structure. We created a federal structure which is centralized, but there was some argument in favor of that. There is an historical background of that, but unfortunately, after 70 years of independence, we have not changed that structure. Okay, that's why this is a problem. And then this is what is happening. I'm trying to put it in terms of a picture. Whatever I have said so far in my second part of my presentation, this can be presented in this picture. I've taken this picture from internet, of course, and then created a copy of it. And then what is happening here at the forefront, they are actually fighting the COVID. Because remember, when you talk about Delhi, when you talk about West Bengal, when you talk about Kerala, who is fighting COVID? States are fighting the COVID. They will have to spend in terms of health expenditure. Okay, they can spend money only if they get money from the center. Problem is, one who is fighting directly, it's fighting COVID, the battle, without ammunition. And that is creating some sort of inefficiency in our fighting. And my argument is, if this is the case, then each time there is a pandemic, there is an epidemic, there is a natural disaster, this will happen. Because whenever there is a disaster that struck a state, what they do in terms of reaction, they don't have fund to react. They look at the center, and only when they get some fund from the center, they can react. So that creates some vacuum within the system, and then there is a problem of political synergy, who is in the power in the states and who is in the power in the central government. There is a huge literature on that particular issue, and how the discretionary transfer are managed by this when a particular political party is in power both in the center and then in the state. I am not talking about BJP or Trinamool or Congress or CPI, CPM, any particular political party. Thing is, when there is political synergy, when the same party is in the power in the state and is in the center, it's easier for the state to get some funds. So that is well documented. You can see them. I mean, just Google them, and then there are many writings on that particular issue in India. I mean, taking data from different regimes, not merely from Congress regime or BJP regime. So what I'm trying to argue, this is the problem we are facing right now. How to solve this? Okay, before that, now what the center is saying. Center is saying that center has allowed, center knows that. I mean, center, it's not that center is not aware of this fact. Center knows that. That's why center has allowed the state to borrow more. Actually, in our financial structure, states are allowed to borrow only 3% of their GSDP. That is their gross state domestic product. If West Bengal's state domestic product is 10 lakh crore, which is nearly 10 lakh crore, then West Bengal government is allowed to borrow 30,000 crore, that is 3% of that GSDP figure yearly. You can borrow that from the market. What the government has done, central government has done, accepting the fact that states are facing severe challenges, they have increased that limit by 2 more percentage points. That is what they are saying. Instead of 3%, you can borrow more up to 5% of your GSDP. And subject to certain conditions, you will have to follow certain conditions. 0.5% you can do automatically. Then you will have to follow certain conditions, like you will have to accept one ration card, one nation policy. You will have to improve your power sector reforms policies, and there are there are 4 actually conditions. If you follow those 4 conditions, then you are allowed to borrow 2% more. That is, for West Bengal, if you follow all 4 conditions, then you are allowed to borrow 20,000 more from the market for the financial year 2021. But the problem is, because there is a huge uncertainty, economic uncertainty going on, if you want to borrow it from the market, you will have to pay a huge premium. Because who is going to borrow your bond? I mean, how the borrowing is done? The borrowing is done in terms of selling bonds. State government come up with bonds, and then people or institutions or corporate bodies, they buy those bonds. Just in last, I think in May, end of May, Kerala was trying to raise 6,000 crore in terms of selling what they call pandemic bond. They want to borrow from the market. The kind of rate of interest they are now facing is nearly 9%. That means if they want to borrow from the market, they will have to pay 9%, and that is huge for a state. States are already suffering from huge debt crisis. As you know, some of you know that you must have heard the fact that West Bengal government, I mean, the government of West Bengal is suffering from huge debt crisis. Then if you now ask the governments to borrow from the market at 9% rate of interest, even more, then how they are going to service their debt? They may fall under what is called debt trap. They will have to borrow just to repay their debts. And that is the crisis that the states are facing, and no one is talking about that. States are raising questions, but unfortunately, I don't know why, but center is not listening to this, their concerns. But ultimately, that will have to be addressed. And how that is going to be addressed? What is my argument? What is our argument? Actually, a few days back, we wrote a piece me and Professor Sugata Marjit, we wrote a piece in Anandabajar Putrika about allowing states to print money. And some people ask me, what are you saying? Are you asking the center to give a machine to state government to print money? It's not that. It's basically allowing states to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India. What we are arguing is that because the states are in a precarious situation, they cannot borrow at a high rate of interest. Please allow them to monetize part of their fiscal deficit, because whatever the deficit is there in there, that they are going to rise because of this pandemic. So allow them to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India. Because if they borrow from the Reserve Bank of India will, just like central government, when they borrow from Reserve Bank of India, central government, Reserve Bank of India print new money. There are questions, there are guidelines to be followed. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the principle. It's now time that the central government should allow a part of the fiscal deficit of the state governments should be monetized so that they can get some cheap credit. I'm not saying all the deficits, but a part of the deficits. The guidelines can be framed, modalities can be framed. There are instances. In USA, in first week of June, they came up with a fiscal stimulus of nearly $500 billion, where their states are allowed to borrow from their Federal Reserve, their Central Bank of India. Okay, so this is what I am saying. Immediate attention should be given to solve this kind of serious situation that the states are facing. We should allow the states to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India at a lower rate of, this is very low actually, 1 or 2% instead of 9%. Okay. Then in the medium term, because there is a huge confusion going on in terms of the kind of coordination failure that have happened. As you know, when the lockdown was announced, millions of people they got stranded themselves in urban cities, and then that created this migration crisis and influx of migration crisis. So there should be a mechanism, there should be an institutional mechanism to facilitate, to discuss this intergovernmental cooperation and conflict resolution. This is in the medium term we should do. And in the long run, because as I was saying, that in the context, we chose a command economic structure with centralized federal system in the context of our post-colonial experience. When we got, when we got freedom from British, our mindset was different. We chose a more command economy, and that's why we went for, there are some advantage of that. There were some advantages. But now it's time that it's 70 years from that point now. We should move slowly but steadily towards a more biased, a more, balanced fiscal federal system, where the states are going to have some fiscal autonomy, so that they can take some decisions immediately. They will not have to look at the center. I'm not talking about any political party. This has happened when the crux of the matter is when a political party is at the state, it talks about fiscal federalism and then more balanced fiscal federalism. And then when it goes to the center, it forgets everything. This is the problem we are facing right now. So to me, this is the second problem that is right now we should immediately focus on. Otherwise, this the kind of battle we are fighting with COVID virus, we are going to lose it. Because the fight is with in the front line, the states are there to fight it. So if you don't give them enough fiscal autonomy, enough fiscal power, how they can fight it? With this, I end it here. Thank you all very much for your time and patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dwivedi. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Dwivedi, for your valuable speech. It has enriched us and helped us understand the present situation, the crisis, the typical one which the country has never seen before. I think our audience has enjoyed it and benefited also. And it is clear from their response. Already I find various questions from them, and it's time to address these issues, these questions, queries. Uh, Obviously, it is not possible to answer all these questions, but I would request Professor Dwivedi to pick out the most important and pertinent ones as he thinks and respond to them. You may proceed, Professor Dwivedi. You yourself can choose the questions, or I can provide you with some questions that I find in chat box.
Because I was not following the chat box till now.
Okay, then
yeah. From now onwards, if anything comes, I can, yeah.
Okay, I can raise questions.
Okay.
One question comes from Enakshi Sinha. She asks that how can government increase or improve GDP in this situation?
Yeah,
how can government increase or improve GDP in this situation? Can you?
Yeah, that's precisely what was the point I was trying to make. I mean, because my argument was, if we can understand why, what is the reason behind the fall in GDP prior to, I'm talking about prior to, because what is happening now, we don't have data, enough data to analyze. Prior to COVID, we can straightforward say that the economy was suffering from severe demand problem. So my argument was, the government needs to pump more money into the system, raise purchasing power of the people, spend more money in MGNREGA, spend more money by transferring more money to poor people. I mean, this is not the time to, talk about inflation, because inflation is not going to, I mean, RBI is also saying that inflation is not going to create a huge problem for us because agricultural productions are under control and demand is at its historical low level. So to revive the economy, what the government should do, along with the kind of supply side policies that the government has already taken, government now should focus more on fiscal stimulus, not just stimulus. There is a difference. When I was presenting it, I was saying that even though the total volume of this package was is around 20 lakh crore, the fiscal stimulus is about only 2 to 2.5 lakh crore. You need more. We need more. I know why the government is playing defensively, because the government is in a situation they don't want to step out. They want to play like Rahul Dravid, not like Sehwag. That I can understand. But it's time, because we are facing a severe crisis, it's time the government should step out and play aggressively, because I think without enough demand generation, we are not going to, not going to revive the economy at a faster rate.
Another question that is asked by Sangeeta Gupta from Jadavpur. Can unlocking be a solution to the problem?
I mean, unlocking is a part of the solution. You cannot, without unlocking, you cannot revive. Look, the difference between any other economic crisis that we have experienced so far, what we say recessions, like 2008's recession, or even 1930s recession, Great Depression of the world. The difference between this and any normal recession is that in case of normal recessions, the policies do work in terms of signaling, in terms of facilitating things, in terms of giving signals. But when your production is shut, it's like switching your fan off. If you don't switch it on, unlocking is the only solution. But even with unlocking, say unlocking is done, we are talking about post-COVID situation. We are talking about the situation when the unlocking is done, then what the government should do? The government should pump more money to the system. Why? Even without unlocking, if the producers start producing things, they will start producing cement, they will start producing steel, they will start producing bicycle, buy cars. Who is going to buy? There is not enough demand in the market. you need to start that chain reaction. You need to pump money into the system so that the chain reaction starts, so that people start buying things, and that signal will work. Now suppliers will see, the producers will see that people are buying things, so they will produce more. If the production goes on, if they produce more, then they will employ more people. That will create enough demand for the economy. Just like Keynesian, our standard Keynesian multiplier will kick in.
Another question I find that should what Avijit Binayak Banerjee and others said, the government should give cash money to the people directly. Should it be done, or government should revive the economy by opening it and giving it support to it in various ways?
No, I'm talking about both actually. I'm precisely talking about both. I'm precisely talking about both. Government will have to open up the economy. There is no doubt about that. Without opening up the economy, without opening up without unlocking, if you go with demand push, it will create inflation. If you give money to people and then they will buy, they will go to shopping malls to buy things, but there is no production. I mean, there is nothing available in the shop. Then this will create inflation. You will have to unlock. There is no doubt about that. And what I am trying to argue is that the kind of supply side intervention that was needed, the government has already done that, to my understanding. Now the time for demand side intervention. Government should focus more on the demand side right now. That is my understanding of the situation.
Another question that arises from that is raised by Bhansari Gupta from Jadavpur. How do you differentiate between this recession and other recessions?
Yeah,
other decisions.
Yeah, that I have already mentioned.
You have told me. I
have already mentioned. Yeah. That's an interesting question. Actually, this is what I was saying just few minutes earlier. There is a big difference. Look, when a normal recession happens, this happens due to some interconnection in the market. This is a market forces that acts and that creates some conditions of recession. And then what we do in those kind of recessions, the government intervenes and give signals, give incentives to different sectors of the economy so that the economy can revive. But this is different because this is a created in a sense that this is not the economic forces that has created this problem. Yes, I accept that the Indian economy was going through a slowdown, not necessarily a severe recession. The growth rate was falling. That's true. The economy, which was growing at a rate of 8.5% to 8 to 8.5%, was growing at a rate of only 3 to 4%, is a severe slowdown. But the problem is here the recession is created by switching off the light. You switched off the economic light. So you'll have to switch it on far. I mean, the first thing you will have to do, I mean, with you can do incentive policies, you can do signals, you can do so many things, but without switching it on, how can the kind of policies that we are talking about will work?
Another point that arises that is about political compulsion the country is facing now, that calls for restrictions of imports from China.
Yeah,
what would be its effect on the economy at present situation in the crisis moment?
Yeah, I mean that's a different topic, though. I mean, yes. No, not really related to this, but I have some my own argument, which is pretty strong, and that is if we can answer the question why we are importing, then this will answer our question whether we can stop it. Why we are importing? Because our productivity is lower than their productivity. Only if we can raise our productivity. I mean, think of those days when we used to talk about import substitution as the prime policies, and those days where infant industry argument was the prime argument. But we can't do that. I mean, in a limited way, we can do that because that was political posturing that was going on. I can understand that. But when we are talking about hardcore economics, it's about productivity. It's about productivity difference. Remember, labor in India now, I mean, we used to think that labor in China is cheap. Yes, it was cheap, but now it's not cheap. Their level of, their standard of living is much higher than India's. I mean, whereas our per capita, I mean, just compare the per capita income of size of the economy. We have an economy which is $3 trillion economy. I mean, just below $3 trillion. And the Chinese economy is a $12 trillion economy. So the labor cost is not low there at this moment, but their productivity is very high. That's why they can produce so many things at a cheap rate. If we can create an environment, the kind of policy that the government is now trying to say that Atmanirbhar Bharat or these kind of things, yes, they are welcome, but you can't say Atmanirbhar Bharat without creating environment. If you can create environment through that Atmanirbhar Bharat policy, where the productivity is increased, where you can produce a Redmi like mobile at a cost of only 10,000 rupees, then you don't need to import it from China. It's the productivity difference which creates this kind of problem. So yes, I do support that government should move towards, I mean, it's not just Atmanirbhar. If you can create environment where production will increase, then this will create more employment opportunity in our country also.
I think it answers the question from Sanjit Kundu, who raised the same question. Could we think the Atmanirbhar package boosts the Indian economy and Indian towards self-reliant?
Yeah. That's the related question. That's why
another question I find is, monetary policy is not important to raise supply of money to the hand of the state.
I mean, there is a confusion.
Okay, right. It is not clear. The question is not very clear.
Yeah, no. I can understand what he's trying to answer. I'm trying to ask. The monetary policy, if you remember the kind of package I was talking about, first 2-3 were the part of monetary policy. They are designed to infuse. I mean, when you talk about reduction in CRR, reduction in repo, or reduction in reverse repo, they are all monetary policy. They are designed to increase liquidity into the system. Okay, that part is done. What I have said so far is the supply side packages are there. Okay, in terms of state, what I am trying to argue is that those monetary policies, they are not going to affect the state budget directly. My argument is the state should be given the power to monetize part of their deficit. That means whatever deficit they are going to run for this particular year, they will have, they should be allowed to borrow a part of that from the Reserve Bank at a reduced or subsidized rate. That's what I am arguing.
Another question. Srimoyi Ghosh tries to ask a question, but I don't find the question. Okay, it's not available. Then can we stop? Should we?
And that's up to you.
Did you get my question, Naranga? I have just copied and pasted it.
Raise your question.
I have just copied it in the chat box. You will find it.
Acha. Yes. The question runs like this. That lack of sufficient fund from the center to the states is a grave problem. Also, isn't it crucial that there should be proper utilization of funds by the states, like proper planning and execution of funds to fight emergencies and win it?
Yeah. I mean, there is no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not ignoring the fact that people should utilize their funds. I mean, it's not the state governments alone. This is true for the state as well as the center. I mean, when we ask questions about utilization of funds, we ask questions about the states only. Why don't we ask questions about the center? I mean, there is a kind of, I would say, we have a feeling in our mind that if we give money to the states, they are going to misuse it. And we don't say the same thing about the center. I mean, it's always there. I mean, all of the states, they are signatories to FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. They are supposed to utilize their funds efficiently and effectively. those who have been able to do that, they are managing it in a more efficient way than others. There is no doubt about that. But irrespective of the fact that there are issues of utilization, there is a question of scale also. That's what I want to raise. The states are not having enough fiscal autonomy to encounter this kind of emergency situation. And my argument is it's now time to think about giving states more power. I mean, put conditions and then look at things, whether the states are utilizing and create bodies which will look at into it. There are CAG, there are other bodies available. They do audit state funds regularly and make them more powerful, so that they can put pressure on states, so that the states can are forced to utilize their funds more effectively. I'm not against that. What I'm trying to argue is that it's now time to create a situation where we move from a centralized fiscal structure towards a more balanced federal structure.
Thank you, Professor Dwivedi. And I would ask Professor Probir Bhattacharya to give vote of thanks, give vote of thanks and conclude the session.
Okay. Am I hearable, audible? Hello, hello.
Yes, Pravida, you are quite audible.
It's a great privilege for me to get this opportunity of thanking everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Chandan Surabhi, who is the mastermind of this program. Actually, I'm really astonished this type may happen. Thank you, Chandan. You are also sincerely assisted by our Dola Chattopadhyay, Department of Economics, Ruxanara Begum, Department of Geography, as Rajnaran Gupta. And I am also thankful to these three my sincere colleagues. Now, thanks to Professor Devesh Roy, principal of our college. Actually, we always enjoy his inspiration, any types of program of our college. Now, I am really thankful to our speakers, Dr. Leena Mahato, Associate Professor of Krishnagar Government College, and also just now I have heard Dr. Jayanto Kumar Dwivedi of BKC College, actually who have cleared their busy schedule and have graced us with their presence. One thing I like to say, two speakers have done well, not only well, but in this lucid way they can talk is really a heart-stopping lecture. Particularly, I am saying, Dr. Dwivedi, I am students of chemistry, hence I have heard your lecture. I am forced to hear. Simply, I am forced to hear. Thank you. And now I can thank our Debabrata Mondul, who is the key player of this program. Without his support, it is not possible at all, I think so. But still, the weather was bad, but almost all of the participants have realized that our problem. So, I lastly, but not least, thanks all the participants. And again, I thank both of the speakers for this type of speaking and talk I have heard after a new look. Though I am not seriously habituated to hear this type of lecture, but one thing I must say, I have heard one thing. What is economics, what is center, what is state, what they are facing. It's simply, I have so many questions in my life. I have to talk with any other economics person and clarify all these questions. This is not simply that platform for this type of novice. So I am stopping here. Again, I am grateful to these both of these speakers, particularly Jayanto Babu. Thank you. I like to thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to all. Now this is the end of our program. Thank you.
ওকে, তবে তুমি যা করলে দারুণ করেছো, হেভি, সত্যি ভালো লেগেছে।
Okay, let's leave. Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
ওকে,
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you all for making the webinar a successful one.
Sir, feedback link.
আচ্ছা,
ওগুলো মেলে বলবে, যা কথা বলার মেলে বলা হবে। হ্যাঁ, বলে তো দিয়েছো অলরেডি।
We will send the feedback link to the respective mail of the participants.
ও
যাচ্ছে না কেন?